welcome again to the Enjoy Me channel. We prepared this review to share our perspective of the new Google Pixel 5. We thought that in order to intuitively understand whether this phone will be for you or not, perhaps the best way is to compare it with something that's more familiar. So, we're about to carry out two comparisons. One in-depth comparison with the current competition, the iPhone 12 Pro, and, even though there will be many exceptions to this rule, the average person upgrades their phone once about every 2 years. So, we will also do a comparison with the 2-year-old model from the same Pixel series, the Google Pixel 3, to see how much technical advancement has been made. On this video, let's take a look at a face-to-face with the iPhone 12 Pro. One thing we should note before we go into the details of the comparison is that there is a price difference of $300, and these two phones are not meant to compete with each other. The iPhone 12 Pro is a flagship level phone priced at $1,000, which puts them in competition with the Samsung Galaxy S20 or the OnePlus 8 Pro, who are at the same price point. Whereas, the Google Pixel 5 is a lower tier phone priced at $700, meant to compete with the iPhone 12 mini or OnePlus 8, which are priced the same, or the Samsung Galaxy A series, which is priced at $500. The Google Pixel series, until now, were at the flagship level and price point, but in the newest model, they have changed their position to the lower tier. We will look into 5 points in this review: the quality of the photos taken by the phone, the capacity of the battery and actual performance in everyday use, the performance of the processor, the sound quality of the speaker, and the overall looks and level of finish. Let's dive right into the first article, the quality of the photos. The people who are interested in Pixels are usually looking forward to a few things: the clean, untainted reference Android OS with no additional UI, the integration with the Google ecosystem, and the camera that has always come out on top. But, with the price cut in the 5th model, we didn't get so much upgrades in the hardware of the camera of the Pixel 5. Looking at the spec sheet, it seems the hardware of the dual cameras is more or less equivalent to the iPhone 11. Whereas the iPhone 12 Pro, in addition to the 3 cameras, has a LiDAR sensor to measure the accurate distance from the objects. However, the Pixel series have never had the higher ground when it comes to hardware, but they always came out on top. Let's see how they do this time with the price cut. First, let's check out the daytime picture and the HDR. In order to examine the HDR, we'll isolate A, the dark trees, B, the brighter trees, C, the buildings afar, and D, the sky. Arguably, you can say the Pixel 5 does a better job of distinguishing the 4 different areas. If we zoom in, we can see clearer textures in the dark trees, clearer shadows in the brighter trees, and better contrast between the sky and the building in Pixel 5. Given these facts, although we're limited to only one sample, we can conclude that the Pixel 5 has an edge in HDR processing and daytime photos over the iPhone 12 Pro. Second thing to look at is the portrait mode. At first sight, both photos do a good job of digital outfocusing and letting the object pop out. But when we zoom in, we can see the Pixel does a better job of defining the boundaries of the project, while the iPhone is fudging within what we would expect will be the object of the photo. Again, with this one sample, Pixel 5 seems to do a better job in portrait mode than the iPhone 12 Pro. We tried a pretty ordinary night view with relatively sufficient lighting. Comparing these two photos, the Pixel 5 seems to focus on bringing out the delicate nuances of the colors, whereas the iPhone 12 Pro is going for the punchy contrasts and highlights. It reminds me of the difference between Canon and Nikon. For these two photos, we think it's more of a matter of artistic preference rather than an issue of one being better than the other. Finally, let's check out the night shots in extremely dark conditions. Both cameras do an amazing job of bringing the details out of the darkness. But, even at a quick glance, you get the impression that the iPhone managed to catch more light and provide a brighter image. It seems that the iPhone has a larger sensor to start with, making this possible. Google used to be the champion of night sight, but it seems you can't beat actually better hardware in this realm. It seems the iPhone takes the cake when it comes to photography in the dark. Moving on to the next issue of the battery. Perhaps this is something to be covered in the comparison with the older phone, but both the Pixel 5 and iPhone 12 Pro managed to increase huge amounts of screen time. In the former generations, with my usage pattern of using only Chrome, podcasts, and maybe some pictures, around dinner time I usually drop to around 15%, and would stop fiddling with my phone on my way back home so I don't miss calls. Now, having used the Pixel 5 daily for over 2 weeks, the experience has been different. After light use, like mentioned before, I would normally have 70 or even 80% left at the end of the day. Even if I'm using more power-hungry features, like taking videos or having video calls during the day, I have yet to see the phone go below 40%, provided I left in the morning with a full tank. My friend with the new iPhone 12 Pro tells me he had a similar experience. These experiences may be subjective, but the experimental data from Phone Arena backs this up. When it comes to light use such as browsing on Chrome or Safari, there is a significant increase of screen time compared to the previous generations. But when it comes to playback on YouTube, which is a more power-hungry activity, the iPhone 12 series do not show improvement from the last generation. In this category, the Pixel 5 seems to do quite better. And here's the shocking part. In 3D gaming, which is probably the toughest activity from your battery's point of view, the screen time on the new iPhone series is actually cut in half. The Pixel 5 isn't as amazing as the iPhone 11 series or the Samsung Galaxy S series, but it still has a considerable edge over the new iPhones. Perhaps the lackluster performance in some areas with the iPhone is because there's still some more optimization to do with the new A14 Bionic processor, but the same can be argued for Google. And when you also consider the fact that the physical capacity of the battery is 2,815 amps in the iPhone 12 Pro and 4,080 amps in Pixel 5, we think it's reasonable to say that the Pixel 5 is the better phone to have from the battery life standpoint. Article 3. The performance of the CPU and the effect in everyday use. Let me show you a quick experiment of opening a similar page in Chrome and Safari respectively when the programs are completely turned off. The iPhone manages to open the browser much faster than the Pixel 5. For a simple understanding, these are the processor tiers in the Qualcomm Snapdragon series, which are used in Google, OnePlus, and some Samsung phones, and etc. The Pixel 5, unlike its previous generations, uses the 7 series, the premium tier processors. Looking at the benchmarks against the A14 Bionic, which is flagship tier, there is a significant difference in performance. That notwithstanding, although loading times are longer, once the apps are loaded on the RAM, even if it's a 3D game, the difference in experience is not that huge. If you're taking certain photos which require some processing, you might have to wait a bit longer, but since that happens behind the UI and lets you do other things in the meantime, it probably won't bother you at all. We think that the vast majority of the people will not be as annoyed with the slower performance of the Pixel 5 in everyday life as the benchmarks suggest. But facts are facts, and the iPhone 12 Pro takes a big win in the processor category. The next thing to see is the quality of the speakers. This is where Pixel, which held up a remarkable fight against the $300 more expensive opponent, starts to fall apart. In this generation, we have a full frontal display, losing the real estate for the exposed speaker at the top, leaving only the bottom speaker on the lower edge of the phone. First of all, the sound quality or volume when it comes to calls had no problems. But when you have your phone on your desk and are listening to music, podcasts, or having a call on speakerphone, having one of the speakers hidden behind the display will have some impact to the sound quality. The comparison was done with the Pixel from 2 generations ago and not the iPhone 12. Let's take a look. The mic does not catch the exact experience of the difference when listening in person, but there is a drop of sound quality when listening to the speakers of the Pixel 5. Also, because of the nature of the speakers behind screens, there is some vibration to the screen when the sound is playing. You can definitely feel the vibration on the surface, but it's not strong enough to be uncomfortable, especially since when you're using the speaker, it'll probably be off your body. It's basically impossible for a speaker behind the screen to put up a fight in sound quality with an exposed speaker. In order to have the full frontal screen, losing the frontal exposed speaker is inevitable. You can say that the iPhone inarguably has the better speaker, but the Pixel has sacrificed the speaker quality to acquire the full top bar of the screen, which is useful for the notification icons that the iPhone doesn't have. Finally, let's go over to the finish and overall look. This can be a subjective issue, and to admit before we go into this, I'm not personally an Apple fan. However, having seen the two products, it is very difficult to make an argument for the Pixel. Actually, compared to the disappointment that the Pixel fans had when the news was released that the Pixel will be finished in plastic this year, the finish came out pretty nice. It has this expensive, papery texture that definitely does not feel cheap. But still, it can't really compete with the satin-like glass finish texture and the chrome finish stainless steel of the iPhone 12 Pro. Personal opinion? I think the right angle design of the 12 series is also a huge plus. For the finish and overall look, our verdict is that the iPhone 12 Pro takes the cake. For the fights that the Pixel lost earlier, people who are interested in Pixels probably don't care as much. The more important things for Pixel fans are the integration with the Google IoT ecosystem, the OS that gives you the best info possible from your search history, or the Android OS which gets updated first in line. But for those of you who live in countries where Google Pixel is not officially on sale, I found a huge catch. On the Korean web, I found the information that if you buy a Pixel 5 from, for example, the US Google store, that phone will have a 5G carrier lock, only allowing access to 5G from American carriers like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and etc. After looking into this information is straight from Google Japan and trustworthy. Simply put, if you bought your Pixel 5 from another region, it will only function as a 4G phone. As of right now, because 5G coverage is not that extensive, this may not come as a huge downside. But as time goes on and more people use 5G, this will become a big deal. If you're planning to buy outside of the regions where the Pixel was released, please keep this in mind. Hoping that this will help your decision on whether or not to buy it, we looked through 5 points of the Google Pixel 5 and one potential deal breaker if your area does not have Pixels on sale. For those of you who have no experience in Pixels, let me give you a quick opinion on why the Pixel is worth buying. Of course you can install Google Photos, Google News, Google Home on your iPhone or Samsung. But for your Google account, which has your login passwords, search history, and a lot more information, to be there globally integrated in your phone at the OS level is another thing. Even though the processor has taken a step back from the previous generation, just the fact that the Pixel 5 is the newest, most optimized phone for the Google ecosystem with the added functions for Google's long-term plan makes it worthy to buy. Another thing is that the Pixel does not have an additional UI like Samsung, OnePlus, or LG would, which is added weight above the pure Android. The comfort coming from this is a great plus for those who appreciate minimalism. If the mentioned are things that you would like, the Pixel 5 is definitely the phone for you. I actually have a lot more to say beyond tech about why I personally prefer Pixels over iPhones, and I'll share that in a future video. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll come back to you soon.